About the standard and poor credit ratings for Sri Lanka being at triple C plus stable level, just one level above the indicator for the countries or the ratings for countries who are in an economic crisis. So actually the major problem is the unexpected COVID-19 and the failure of the US globalization trade policy as a result. So the US Department of Trade must take the responsibility for this situation, and also the school children's nutrition programs. Thankfully, the U.S. Ambassador to Colombo, Mrs. Laina Teplis, I think she managed to obtain some food support from the Department of Agriculture, U.S. But the whole the thing cannot be solved in this way, because the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a more responsible role to play, because there is a current problem with regard to the fertilizer. Sudden government decision to transfer into the carbonic fertilizer by and carbonic pesticides and etc. And carbonic weedicides, and then to give up chemical fertilizer, chemical pesticides and chemical weedicides. Now, under these circumstances and the continuous protest by the farmers demanding the chemical fertilizer especially, but also chemical pesticides and chemical weedicides, and President Gotabaya refusing to give up his policy to transfer into carbonic fertilizer especially, and also the carbonic pesticides and carbonic weedicides. Now I think partly this sudden decision would have been prompted because more than, I think, nearly $400 million is spent for chemical fertilizer, chemical weedicides and chemical pesticide imports, and Sri Lanka being under crisis because of shortage or deficit in the foreign exchange reserves of the government of Sri Lanka due to the the reserves of the government of Sri Lanka coming down to $4 billion, with more liabilities from Ceylon Petroleum Corporation of $3 billion, and also the higher amount of liabilities of overseas borrowings by Sri Lanka's commercial banks. And under these circumstances, the government also proposing like a rationing scheme for petrol, diesel. That means issuing a rationing card, and then issuing a petrol on a limited amount quantity and diesel on a limited quantity to the motorists during the pandemic as a solution to the protest against the sudden price rise. In order to support the imports of fuel to the country, since Middle East countries also go through a crisis due to the fall in the global demand for crude oil. Now, what will happen is, if the fuel rationing system is introduced, that means a limited quantity of fuel will be issued to each person based on a mobile application, where the mobile apps would show to the pumper on the petrol shed how much fuel the person has pumped during the week. Beyond that would not be issued according to the government. These proposals under discussions. So also we have seen the Sri Lanka's Energy Minister Udaya Gammampila suggesting US dollars 3 billion second crude oil in like a refinery in Hambantota in Sri Lanka, since the only crude oil refinery which is specifically made for Iranian crude oil refining purposes is in Kolonnawa Sapagaskanda, now being adjusted to even to crude oil from other countries. But since the US imposed sanctions on Iran, so this whole crisis around the world, and also the US Ambassador to Colombo, Mrs. Alaina Teplitz, meeting Sri Lanka's foreign, the fuel minister, Udaya Gammampila, and to explore the opportunities with regard to the $3 billion oil refinery project being handled through the American companies. So all these things, in order to to give a solution, especially the important thing is the foreign currency, the US dollar currency crisis, because Sri Lanka developed the infrastructure, the President Mahinda Rajapaksa developed the infrastructure after the war ended May 19th, 2009, upon my advice, to avoid another catastrophe in the country, unexpected issue after the war ended. That is why the infrastructure that had been neglected for 30 years had been developed based on Chinese loans. Now, the thing is, now nobody expected the COVID-19 pandemic to come, and also nobody expected the US global trade, the globalization trade policy of the US Trade Department to, fail. Because US presidents in 2014-13 period admitted the trade war with China. And of course, a war will be maintained that way. So it became a real war. And finally, the trade war ended by US trade, the globalization trade failing. And so now, the thing is, when you look at this historical side of it, and also because of the sudden COVID-19 pandemic emerging in the country, made, in addition to the issue of Sri Lanka's northeast Sri Lankan Tamil population, and elsewhere the Sri Lankan Tamil population around the country, mostly dependent on the foreign remittances from their relatives, LTT diaspora or Sri Lankan diaspora in that case, from Canada, EU, and US. So they don't work and they don't contribute output to the gross domestic production as a result. So there is a problem of generating exports from Northeast, because the Sri Lankan Tamil community, just depend on the inward remittances from overseas, from their relatives, due to the large number of visas issued to the Sri Lankan unbalanced way to the Sri Lankan Tamil community to migrate to the west during the war period. So this has resulted in another crisis, because we don't get an equal share of the GDP output from them. And obviously, due to lack of exports from Northeast and among the Sri Lankan Tamil community elsewhere, who actually around the country, other than the Northeast, they do import business with India. So now the thing is, the foreign currency reserve falling, the fuel bills going up, and also the liabilities going up, and also the Sri Lanka commercial banks borrowings going up, and in addition to the Sri Lankan Tamil community Northeast becomes more like where their culture is changing, and they are more becoming like the Western nightlife for them in Northeast. So this is a cultural problem that would create another issue where they would forget about their equal rights, everything, etc., which the Transnational Tamil Elam government talks from USA. So this doesn't make any sense. That is why I have suggested the 3 ways to get over this problem. That is, the China do an international sovereign debt factoring program to transfer the Sri Lanka's loan to the transnational government of Tamil, and China exit from this, or Federal Reserve System of USA, Federal Reserve Bank offer US dollar bills in Colombo, or Sri Lanka rupees made 100% convertible currency to international currency. So Sri Lanka government can give rupees and buy dollars and pay the loans. So any one of them would solve this problem at the moment. And also it's important for the US and the UK and the EU and the Canada to create unity among the overseas Sri Lankans, because and also the Sri Lankans here, as long as they are not united, this whole problem cannot be solved this way. And not only that, it will make another huge impact on the world affairs, the world economy. And also, U.S. Ambassador to Colombo, Mrs. Alana Taplis, negotiating, for a normal meeting, and inquiring about the US dollar $3 billion investment on the second oil refinery, crude oil refinery, and possibility of American investments. The thing is, Sri Lanka needs like at least nuclear physics-based water reactors. If uranium-based nuclear power plants are not possible due to any other reason, well then water reactors like in Iran or any other way to make electricity, because soon with the crude oil like in the local market, the petrol and diesel rationing schemes are being discussed now, since the CPETCO Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is a monopoly of the government. Soon there will be a reduction in the oil in the market, and then gradually with the hydropower also not stable, since it depends on the nature rains, there will be power cuts in the country. In that case, the internet will go off. So before that, we need to make sure that our power energy would work, especially internet telecommunication networks would fail rather, if power supply breaks due to the oil crisis and the hydropower issues, which is based on nature, which we can't predict. There's rains. So that is why Sri Lanka needs a nuclear physics based reactor to give energy to the electricity supply to the people, at least a water reactor, to in case uranium reactors are not possible due to the current political misunderstandings.